oh, there's fancy app people, and then there's, hey, data people. It's like, no, you're actually building an experience for somebody. So be certain that it's right and explainable, and be certain that it fits in and it's pleasant to use. It's important.
Saying AI hallucinates is a really easy way to, devolve yourself of any ownership. Well, that's nothing to do with humanity or me. Like, it's reflecting us back at us, and it's we need to remember that sometimes.
Things are going to push to the end. When I saw what the power of what AI could do, I was like, data people are either going to have to be hardcore data engineering, like doing things that ETL, like that is the hard work, or they have to be hardcore business facing. There's no more delicate geniuses allowed.
This is the Scale Your Business with Data podcast with Graeme Crawford of Crawford Macmillan. You're now listening to the only podcast that is designed from the ground up to bring you insights and stories from real data experts. You'll learn how to use the power of data to take your business to the next level with Graeme and his guests. They're also going to show you how the data is often the gold hidden in plain sight and how it will unblock the road to growth ahead. With the clarity of vision and inspiring leadership of change, your business should be able to make multi-million-dollar decisions in minutes, not months. So let's get started. Thanks for listening.
All right, so today I'm joined by Nick White, a data strategy leader with over 20 years of experience transforming how organizations leverage their information assets. Nick's impressive career has taken him through leadership roles at companies like Nike, where he revolutionized their approach to KPI alignment, and Kin + Carter, where he led data strategy initiatives across multiple industries. What makes Nick's perspective particularly valuable is his ability to bridge the technical aspects of data with the human elements of decision making. And in today's conversation, we're going to explore how organizations can move beyond simply collecting data to actually using it to drive meaningful outcomes. Also, the evolution of AI implementation and Nick's framework for decision intelligence that helps businesses focus on what truly matters. Nick, welcome to the show. It's great to have you.
Oh, thanks for those nice words. Good to be here, Graham.
I mentioned there in the intro, like this big gap between collecting data and making it useful. So, like, just how big is that gap and how much is in between it?
Oh, it's ginormous, to use a technical term. I think for years and years, it's been collecting data and visualizing data. But how many decisions are actually being impacted positively with data? When you're in the belly of some beasts and you see how they work, you kind of go, oh, well, you guys make money despite not really having an idea if your decisions are correct or not, right? So I think there's a huge gap. I think people, either look at data with a capital D as gospel, or they
Yeah.
kind of, look for the data to go reinforce their inherent biases on what they think they should do. So I think the gap's there. I mean, the only gap that isn't there is the amount of money people are spending working with data.
Yeah, that's for sure. And the other one I'd add on that I think we spoke about before was like beyond the biases, maybe the unconscious biases, there are sometimes these conscious biases of like I have an idea in my mind of what story I want the data to tell me. So therefore I'm gonna present it and cut it and slice it and manipulate it or even change the collection of it to match that story that I have in my mind.
Yeah, I mean that's a huge thing, and quite frankly, the reason why in my recent career here, I've focused on this idea of decision intelligence and decision science. And one of the leaders in that space, Cassie Kay, who was at Google, I mean, she has said the big question for data professionals is what would change your mind if I could tell you this piece of data? Like, if you're able to do that and actually have that impact on what somebody's already preset to do, that's huge. But it's really hard.
What would you do differently if this measure was different, right? I was writing about this week. It's I call it the mythical all green dashboard, and I've seen it at many different companies that I've gone to. And there's nothing a senior executive likes more than to show up to the monthly meeting and see the dashboard all green. My initial response to it in advance of a meeting like that would be, well, we can cancel the meeting then, right? Because everything's green, everything's rosy. But of course, you take away that exposure to the team to the senior person, and suddenly they're not so keen to cancel it. So that's a technique I've used before of like, hey, like we're going to prioritize the conversation and the agenda around whichever work streams or projects or whatever it might be, those that are yellow or those that are red, and those that actually need the leadership support to try and get people to think differently about it. But that's at the root of it, right? A well-designed dashboard should drive a different action or should create strategy in some way or another, right?
Yeah, I mean, this could have been an email. That's kind of what you're saying to them, right? And I think it comes down to how people are constructing KPIs. And we've all seen, I don't know if you've seen, but definitely I've seen on LinkedIn and other social media, just like, what does a KPI stand for? We all know key performance indicator, and there's like, the live, laugh, love version of that, which is like, oh, keep
Yes.
people interested and all that stuff. But at the end of the day, what I've seen is KPIs end up being established for plausible deniability and like
Yeah.
stolen valor type of things. So they're either too big or too, manipulatable to really have an impact. Like you said, like there should be, where's the discussion? Data should bring up a friction and a discussion point to add additional context to make a different decision if you're doing it right.
Stolen valor sounds like a fascinating phrase. Like, can you tell me a bit more, dive a bit more into that?
Well, I have to thank my wife for watching all these Datelines, and they talk about, oh, this guy who murdered somebody had stolen valor. It's kind of when you in the armed forces, it's like, well, you're saying you did something and you didn't do it. Like you were not a hero. And I kind of look at some KPIs that way where there's this KPI that's huge and it depends on 6 or 7 different business units kind of doing some of the right things and a lot to do with luck. And then somebody goes, "That's my KPI. I won that." And I think what happens is you lose people because you go, "Well, for that to happen, the product had to be good. It had to be delivered well. We had to buy the right amount of it. It had to be merchandised correctly." There was a lot that happened, and all you do is move products. So thank you for moving product. But I bet there's a KPI that more is derivative of that, larger KPI that gives you real time feedback on how well did you contribute to that big one.
That's a fascinating one, and especially if I think about it in the context of something that I've spoken about a lot, which is the way that performance is measured and managed within, larger, particularly larger corporate environments. It's a zero-sum game. There's a normalized distribution curve. Not everyone can win. Some people have to lose, and those are the rules. So, given that context and that setting, like it almost becomes understandable to me why stolen valor would exist. There's a clear value from stolen valor in that in that particular scenario. It also then creates this behavior that I've seen multiple times when you're at the start of a project or you're building a new process or you're standing up a new team, why people get so emotional around where we set the KPIs and what red, yellow, and green actually means, because they're concerned about how that might reflect back on them, right?
You're right. These are judgments of good or bad, not answering a question if we did something right or wrong. And that's inherently where it loses its steam. And it is a very political thing within a corporation to have a KPI that you can deliver at because, anymore and we do want to put some system and science against art, but anymore when you're just looking at, oh, did you check off this KPI? I'll never forget, I was a pricing strategist earlier in my career, and we were setting all these kind of ambitious goals and okay, we're going to have percent increase of price year over year. And I was like, I don't know if I can do that. I'm actually looking at my book of business that I have to manage, and there are some egregious prices already there. And I
Right.
don't feel good about, you know, raising them. Now, luckily, I worked with a very thoughtful guy and a thoughtful VP and executive that said, yeah, you know what? Like, we have to do the right thing. But that should not be the exception. The right thing for the business should be what we're measuring, not an exception to what we're measuring, right? Which it seems like there's a lot of that. And then, if you get somebody who doesn't like, the shape of your jib or whatever it is, right? It could be used as a negative. So I think it feels like it's kind of lost its place. I think people are trying, but we're still getting caught up in protecting. I mean, Maslow's hierarchy of needs. You have to meet your needs first before you're self-actualizing. So there's just a lot of stuff pent up in something as simple as a KPI today.
Yeah. But and that hierarchy of needs in those corporate environments that we've talked about, like always number one is that job security, or illusion of job security, at least as I would like to call it. Number one, before like can I add incredible value to this business, is can I retain my job, right? And what do I need to do to prove that my performance has been sufficient in order to meet the expectations, and dodge this rotation of the swinging axe that comes around every 6 months or every 12 months, depending on where you're at. And not only does it kill KPIs and data, but it stifles innovation, and it hugely disincentivizes risk taking.
100%. And I keep going back to this idea, like we're talking about this very simple thing called a KPI. And I mean, I don't know about you, but most of the places I've seen KPIs are at executive level. What about those operational KPIs? Like how are we empowering somebody to have that sense of security by tracking to a KPI that's meaningful to them? And it can be derivative. It doesn't have to look, things in life are not directly like, it's not cause and effect all the time. Sometimes correlation is good enough, but you got to have some sort of effort to empower an employee to feel like they can tell their story on how they've actually impacted or took a really good chance at trying to positively impact a KPI at an executive level by decomposing it into something that, here's a KPI that you should use as a litmus test of, should I make a different decision? And then tell that story as you go through your reviews and how it might have impacted. Like, I took this action when I knew I should have. Like, that's all you can do. I think ambitiously you go, well, if I can raise my prices 3%, then maybe my margins are 3% more or more, right? Like
Mm.
pricing, driving demand and driving pricing up. The pricing lever is a huge thing everybody uses. Now, sometimes it makes sense. Other times it's kind of a lazy, easy way to make more money. I think really the ambition there is to go, we want to increase margins. Like that was the real, but there shouldn't be this philosophical, you know, wheel in my head going to go, oh, like you really just care about increasing margin. Makes complete sense. But also I would go back, and I didn't say this back then, but I've taken this forward, and like, oh, I wish I would have said that. But you know, 3% of $0 is $0. So
Yeah.
one of the things for me is like, there's inflation, there's cost of living increases, there are these things that happen, but once again, in the best of times, you're going to be able to have a margin, have price increases above that. Other times you got to be below it. The main thing is that you are working with customers to make sure that you're keeping them, because that is, price increases that lose you customers that are good is a bad idea.
Dad used to say to me in situations like that, the operation was a success, but the patient is dead.
Yeah. Yeah. Great job,
Right.
but it doesn't matter.
Yeah, absolutely. How do you think that would have played out if you had, you say you wish you had said that at the time? How do you think it would have played out if you had come forward and said it?
I think my VP would have laughed and liked it, because I talk about one of his quotes. I'll never forget this, because I think I was finally becoming an adult when I had this job. And one of the things he said is, Nick, hope's not a strategy. I'm like, got it. Because it isn't. And I use that all the time. So I think he would have actually liked it and said, and that's why I didn't get pushback. I think overall he knew, hey, my pricing team's goal here is to increase by 3%, but price is a part of revenue and it impacts margin. So he was also pretty open to all of that. So I think he would have liked it, because he gave me that gem about hope is not a strategy, which I've used so much as a product manager and strategist.
Yeah, I learned that one the hard way as well. I think I put the word hope or hopefully or whatever in a leadership presentation deck that I was doing, and had the same quote thrown at me just by the by virtue of me including it. Like, it basically undermined the credibility of the whole deck because I put hope in there, and it removed that certainty from the recommendation. Even though I was actually certain about the recommendation, I think those environments we talked about before lead you to want to hedge sometimes, right?
And you have to bracket it, right? Everything is about bracketing it. So you could go like, hey, like this is one thing you could do, and I know your recommendations are good, so it was the right thing. But probably in the background of your mind as you're delivering it or typing out the deck, right? You're like, well, if this person does this, if they actually stick to it, they're ifs, right? So those become assumptions, those become risks, and we can give, our best guess, like, and maybe be wrong, but it's based on the information we have. So hope is definitely not a strategy, but like I said, something happening and you doing something like a correlation that doesn't correlate, like that's also terrible. And there's
Yeah.
people running around with a bunch of bravado, very little data, and kind of getting away with it. So, like I said, there's something in between. Hey, I'm very humble. Maybe this will do it. I hope it works. And this is the answer. It's two sides of a coin. If we can just keep that coin vertical, we'll be okay.
Yeah, lies, damn lies, and statistics, right?
That's right.
I think you could take any standard scatter plot and basically draw a straight line in any direction and angle through it, and then try and claim correlation from it. If you make that line thick and black enough, like, it can it can look convincing, whatever you're trying to say. We talked about some of the underlying difficulties and contradictions that exist in the world of work. And the phrase you used was you were becoming an adult, and I think it resonated with me in terms of, like, you join the world of work out of school, and then you basically have to start again and become again and mature again. Can you tell me a bit more about, like, what you meant by becoming an adult and what that process was?
So my undergrad's in journalism, photojournalism specifically. So
Oh,
that was
nice.
super duper helpful as I went into things like pricing strategy and data. Yeah, look, every organization has its own ecosystem. When I mentor and manage people that are just coming into the work world, I just try to give them, like, it's not so much whether you're right or not, it's how you're right. So something I learned early on in my career. There's a reason why I'm in data, and it's because I'm kind of good at making logical connections and have a pretty strong background in math, and inherently I'm there. It doesn't matter if I can't make somebody else understand it who needs to understand it.
Right.
And I always go back to this idea of, like, people want to watch House MD. They don't want to work with Dr. House. You can't run it. So I think for me, I was learning, hey, I have some talent here. Whereas before I felt like an imposter, but also I don't have to be a jackass about it when I'm the head, because it doesn't matter. Like, organizations are like ships or boats. The bigger the one, the harder it is to turn. So that's where I kind of was starting to learn that this isn't a side gig. This is how you make your living. And if you want to make a good living in corporate America, you need to be able to understand how to bring people along with you, even if you're right, and be open to learning and being wrong. And that's kind of what happened in that space where I heard these hope is not a strategy stuff and just kind of leaning into what I was getting good at.
Yeah, being right gracefully and being wrong gracefully. There's a corporate version of what we get taught on the athletic fields of high school, right? Winning and both winning and losing gracefully. The link, by the way, the photojournalism is an interesting thing because and it might just be the angle that I'm looking at it from because I used to be a photographer myself, but the we should have another conversation about that and why SLRs only stay open for 30 seconds. As I learned a really interesting reason why that happens. It's for tax purposes that an SLR video shutter shuts after 30 minutes. Anyway, photojournalism and business intelligence, like telling a story with a visual, right? You've seen that connection before, surely.
Yes, yeah, like, as I got I think you end up at a certain point, and we're of similar ages where you go, "Well, okay, how the heck did I get here?" And you look back and you
Yes.
go, "Oh, like, working in data, telling stories, using visuals, these are all things that I'm doing." And you teach yourself SQL along the way, you teach yourself how to use the different platforms. So yeah, I mean, it was right there, but I had no idea, and that's why I ran away from computers when I was going to college
Right.
because I had spent so much, I had done some programming. In high school, we had a program and I was in the program, and I didn't like it. So I ran away from it, only to kind of circle back into more of a technology focused career. And that just goes to prove, like, data, insights, analytics, if you want to extend it to AI, it's really about storytelling and communicating and, defining logical, explainable connections between things. It's not technology. It isn't.
I love that you shared that story. I've had a couple of conversations with people in the last few weeks who, similar to you, got scared off and was like, well, this is not the field for me, and ended up coming back to it. Like, the call it fate or destiny, or call it like people's natural strengths will always pull them to the right place in the end, as they open their mind and progress through their careers. What was it about the technical that scared you off and made you run away? Was it do you think it was the way it was taught? Do you think it was s- coding and the ones and zeros and starting from the bottom up is just not the right and enticing way to approach it? Like, what was it that scared you off?
Yeah, coding. I mean, I wish I could describe. We would go to this place called the Career Prep Center, and we had this big room, a bunch of old computers hooked up to an AS400.
Oh
We
yeah.
had, you know, we we had chart paper to do, you know, our flow charts, and I just could care less. Like, I was like, cool, it does that, but I didn't it didn't resonate with me. I was like, I can't spend my life doing that. I just couldn't do it. So it was like just a combination, but you know, it, I hate coding. I just not for me. But do I love solving a problem? Yeah, I love solving a problem, and I don't mind, you know, learning what I need to from a technology standpoint to do that. But for that, like, I don't know how to describe it. It's just like, you know, I'm a golfer, right? And you could have the most beautiful swing and hit the ball well and score like shit, or you could score well. And for me, the idea was, how do I score well versus have a beautiful swing as it relates to working with data and in these constructs?
This is a whole fascinating tangent we can go off down for a long time, because I also play golf, and I also have improved a lot in the past few years, and I put data down to one of that. So I as a certified data nerd, right, I use the Arcos Bluetooth sensors on my club,
Oh, wow.
and it knocked like 3 or 4 shots off my handicap. And the reason why is the difference between what's actually happening and what's happening in your head, right? So you go to the bag and you pull your 7 iron out or whatever else, and you think, oh, well, I hit this. I mean, what do I used to tell myself? Oh, I hit this like nearly 160. Turns out that I don't. Turns out that, like, if I hit my 7 iron off the middle with a perfect swing with the proper weight transfer and all of that good stuff, then I can hit it 160. But actually, on average, I was hitting it 151 or 149. So it works by Bluetooth. It measures where you are. It knows which sensors on each club. So it tracks at a basic level how far you're hitting each club. You can put more data in about putting and whatever else on greens hit, but like, it will just sit in your pocket and do this unobtrusively without you having to do anything. Because personally, I found like the putting stats, like, you have to. Here's a data governance, data quality piece. Right, my data quality is lower, but like, I don't want to have to get my mobile phone out on every green and like chart where I took my putts from, and like, especially if I've just three putted, the last thing I want to do is like
Yeah.
draw three lines on this. It's not what I want to do. But the single most interesting stat that I took away was the GIR thing, and I thought, oh, it'll give me my greens in regulation percentage. But actually, what it did, as well as it showing me whatever it was, 42% greens in regulation, it showed me like where I missed the green. And it was like I miss left like 10%, I miss right about 8%, I miss short 2%, and I missed long. Sorry, I missed long 2% or 1% long, and then 80 something, 70 something percent, whatever's left out of that was all short. And I was telling myself in my head that what that my average was actually, in truth, what my best was, right on the end of the standard deviation curve. And it knocked like 3 or 4 shots off my handicap because I just stared it in the face 50 rounds later, and I was like, well, I guess I can't deny that I'm fooling myself. An awesome book. It's something called The Four Foundations. I'll send it to you afterwards. That took an additional 2 shots off my game, and that was all about just how you think about and how you recover from your game. And the three, it encourages you to split your game into 3 pieces: off the tee, and then moving the ball forward, sort of approach, and then short game. And it said, hey, like, what's your handicap, Nick? Like, where are you
I'm a
around
9
golf?
right now.
So perfect, about the same. I'm 9.0 literally, just up from 8 point. So we're almost exactly the same. So for someone who was a 10 handicap, it said off the tee, approach, short game. On your average round, one of those 3 things is going to be going well for you, right? You will feel like you've had a great round. 2 out of those 3 things have gone well for you. Approximately like and this is for a 10 handicapper, 1 in 100 rounds, you'll do all 3 of those things well. And so many 10 handicappers put themselves in this mental prison because they don't equip themselves with this data and they don't understand what the baseline is. And like, you could be hitting really well off the tee, and your approach and your short game's gone to pot. And then you talk yourself out of the second half of the round of like, I'm not playing well, blah, 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 blah. When actually, in truth, you're having one of your better rounds. You just don't realize it because you're letting yourself mentally get sucked in because you're not looking at the data, right? And it's a really powerful example of just how cool it could be. Anyway, I'll share all that stuff with you afterwards. I'll share this book.
Yeah.
I think the book's a fantastic book. I'll do a sly segue from golf into Nike, and like all the time you spent working there in data. Obviously there's confidentiality, and I'm not asking you to give away any company secrets, but as I think of companies who I'd love to see the insides of their data, like Nike is certainly one of them, and not just because of the 6 pairs of Jordans I got sitting in that cupboard next to me. It just seems like such a cool place to work. Is there anything you can share about the data landscape that might surprise people about Nike, or something interesting?
It's interesting because Nike was founded and they used to sell um, shoes out of the back of like this VW bus type of thing.
Really?
Yeah, there's something about the DNA and accepting who you are. And they used to talk about Nike DNA all the time. And of course, like it can be a little much, but I think what's interesting is that the people who came through who understood what the company was. And the company, like, look, the company is not a shoe company. It's a sports marketing company,
Right.
and they do make pretty nice shoes. They have kind of, a monopoly in the space, right? Like with Adidas being way below them, and then you have kind of these bit players like Puma and New Balance and others, right?
And
But
that was before the badly judged chips they put on Kanye.
yes, of course. Yeah. Yeah, we'll see what Bad Bunny does for them. I think the interesting thing with them is that um, the more that they leaned into what they were really good at, the better they did, and that never changed. So,
Right.
you know, this idea of Nike is a premium brand. Well, they kind of knew they could go across the board. There was an interesting study when I was there where, oh, why did this shoe, we did this shoe last year. It was gangbusters. What happened? Like, why are we liquidating all of this? And these are all data issues, right? We're looking at it. We're looking at prices. We're looking at profit. And the one thing that they pulled in the second year was the marketing budget. And that just went to like, when we tell stories and we know things anecdotally, there's usually some truth there.
Yeah.
Like I said, they're a sports marketing company. And the more they lean into that's what they are, the better they do. And it was just interesting to see version 1 of this shoe and version 2 of this shoe be completely different. And it all came down to how much marketing bucks they put into it. Like, it was really
Wow.
interesting. And then you have like these evergreen brands like Jordan, and Jordan's going to finally get into golf full time, it looks like. But, you know, you're printing money with those. You print money with those limited edition thing. Like, it's just, but you got to keep them limited edition.
Yeah.
Um, so it's just kind of interesting to see through that study of this one shoe from one season to the next, the marketing budget and them being a terrific marketing engine. It was night and day the way this thing performed.
That's amazing. I mean, there's a couple of things stick in my mind. Travis Scott is the obvious one that comes to mind. Like I've never taken the plunge and press the button on the sneaker websites to get one of them. Mainly because I'm worried that like someone will like mug me on the street and take them off my feet. I don't, a pair of shoes that I don't think I would ever wear outside is for fear of having them removed from me is not something I wanted. But the thing that sticks in my mind, though, was very earlier on in my career, while I was still becoming an adult, where I was learning about human-centered design and what marketing is at its root, right? And it's about telling a story. It's about addressing a problem. It's a game of emotions rather than a game of data. And the example they used was the marketing video that Casey Neistat did, the Make It Count video. And I think he was an up and coming advertiser, and they said here's a bunch of money, and he just spent it like flying him and his buddy around the world and like filming him running in lots of different places. It was just so kind of ahead of its time, both in terms of like how you do it, and then they were able to spin it into a really really cool campaign.
I worked with a ton of designers at Kin and Carta. I got very, very comfortable, and things started clicking when I heard this theory. And the best way to hear these theories is when you get involved. And I always think about whenever I present things, I talk about the front stage and the backstage and how important those two places are, and how you can't really put on a good play without the backstage having something together.
Yeah,
It's going to be a mess, right? And you also don't want to build all the things for every play you're going to do before you actually do a play and get some revenue coming in. And I just feel like, it gets used in the design space, but everybody is designing things when we're doing, like, take that visual element away of dashboarding. The
yeah,
number I put in front of you is important. That's in the front stage. The impact it has. How does it flow into, the process and decisions you're making? Like, those are all important front stage things. But the ETL, the acquisition, the cleansing, the quality, the aggregating, the calculating, those are backstage things. Now, you need both of them. And I have this kind of Ron Swanson pyramid of greatness, which everybody has one of these, right? Where, yeah, take a thin slice of value and, kind of build the plane while you fly it, whatever metaphor you want to use, right? But being very, very conscious of, you're building data products, therefore you need to have a good front stage with the solid backstage that helps you increase speed to value over time. That is the story I've been telling for, in one way or another, the last 20 years. I told my old boss, hey, I've been working on the same deck for 20 years. It just keeps evolving as I learn things and I know things. But I think it's so important you bring up service design, especially in data. I think there's fancy app people, and then there's, hey, data people. It's like, no, you're actually building an experience for somebody. So be certain that it's right and explainable, and be certain that it fits in and it's pleasant to use. It's important.
yeah. I similar to you was lucky enough when I was at Capital One to have to meet someone who took me under her wing and like trained me in the ways of design thinking. And she had a background from hi Jennifer, if you're listening, from Stanford D School, and just transformed the way I look at everything, including from a data perspective. So I used to like be so caught up in like, you don't understand all the hard work that goes into this stuff, and like you'd start a data transformation or whatever it might be, and your clients or your customers, internal, external, whatever it is, always get excited and be like, when can we see the dashboard? And a previous version with me would say, we are so far away from that. Like you have no idea that basically like picking a BI tool and building a dashboard, like that's the 5% on the end of this. Like the 95% of work and all the stuff that you just mentioned, Nick, about the cleansing, the quality, the sourcing, the governance, the quality checking, all of that good stuff that we know happens in behind. But as I've continued through my career and had those influences, and now with my own company, like unmistakably, you still have to go on that journey. But like every engagement, I always start with like, what is the quickest way I can deliver ROI? Like, what is the quickest way I can make this, again, to use Jennifer's words, how can you make it real? How can you make it prototype something and make it real as quickly as possible, so that even if it's just a glimmer of the impact, as you said, a thin slice of the impact, like you can transport people to a future of where you'll be once you've finished this work.
Yeah, and I mean, once AI takes over the world and it's less heavy-handed to do the backstage stuff, which we're already kind of seeing a little bit of, right? Some of these new platforms, and as they get AI correct, it's going to be even, easier to do some of this stuff. It's going to be, all right, do you want to be, I always said, things are going to push to the end. When I saw what the power of what AI could do, I was like, data people are either going to have to be hardcore data engineering, like
Hmm.
doing things that ETL, like that is the hard work, or do they have to be hardcore business facing? There's no more delicate geniuses allowed, because the entry is coming down. And I keep saying, you know, as I've worked with people, especially in more AI applications, data scientists aren't the right answer, and developers or engineers are not the right answer. It's something in between. It's like a cloud engineer who understands data structures but also understands the front end. And that's what's happening. So that design thinking, you're always going to attach yourself to value. You're always going to be able to figure out a way to satisfy your clients, I think, if you're focused on how do I deliver you value and how do I tell you how to scale this value? Because those are the two sides we need to do. And we don't want to sit there forever and, you know, boil the ocean. And we also don't want to build a house without pouring a foundation. So it's like, how do you find the middle part of that?
The middle ground, and it should all get faster. And also the other really empowering thing from design thinking is it allows you to jump the gap between what the client or customer says they need and what they actually need, right? Which is all of those wonderful processes and structures you can use early on to tease that stuff out. And it boils back down to where we started the conversation, like what are we actually trying to measure? Like what is going to make a difference to this business versus like what are we currently measuring, and recognizing that those two things might be very different. I'm glad you opened the can of worms on AI. I don't think there's any conversation that happens about data that doesn't.
You have to.
The world of software engineering I've seen have the vibe coding thing that's all out and about at the minute. It's something I'm quick to warn people of, like, yes, it's perfectly possible. Like you can band-aid pretty much any platform together. And you can Frankenstein any SaaS platform that doesn't exist for yourself now, if you've got someone who's smart enough with Zapier and Make, which are not that hard to master if you understand the logical flow. Yet that in itself is a very unreliable data infrastructure, right? If you're flowing data across 10 different platforms, and you can have the best SaaS platform in the world that will monitor and tell you what's happening and how those data flows are going, but like if they break, like who's going to fix them? What do you think some of the best impact of AI will be on the data world, and like what are you most scared about, or what do you think people will get wrong?
Yeah, I think the best impact it can have, which I have not seen yet, people are still trying to, do things without fixing their data. But I don't know about you, the hardest thing that it feels like to get people to define data elements.
Hmm.
And it's probably the most important thing. Like, what is this thing? What is it not? Now I know how to use it. But we just kind of assume things, right? So if we're able to use large language models to make it easier to have people define their data, that could be a game changer in data governance. Now,
Yeah.
nobody's thinking about that, but that allows you to then do whatever the heck you want with it, because now everybody can understand. You're making data dictionaries, you're making glossaries. Things are lovely. We all know what to do. We can search. It could be a game changer. Nobody's focused on that right now.
Hmm.
Everybody's just trying to jam a chatbot in it. And I think what people are finding is that, okay, so yeah, GPT-4 kicks ass. Gemini, I don't have a dog in the race, right? But you know, you're using a black box, and then you start to hear this term agentic AI, which is the hot new one, like meet the old boss,
Yeah.
same as the new boss, right? It was
Yes.
Gen AI, and now it's agentic AI. Um, and what they've done is they've just shown you a different black box, which is the agent framework. So now you have an agent framework plugging into this giant model that has read the internet, and you're saying, okay, run my customer service business.
Yeah.
That's
Run my
kind of
company. Yeah.
crazy, and then you get to the point where it's not quite working. So I think those are the things I've predicted this for a while, but like, I do think there's going to be a huge snafu for a very big company using this technology, and it just going off the rails, right? That's the bad thing. I hope people start to use it to actually improve their data quality and understanding through automated kind of definitions and stuff of that nature.
Yeah. You heard it here first. Like, we'll play that clip back
I
when it
said it a couple of
happens.
years ago, it didn't happen yet. I was like, oh, or they kept it under wraps. I'm like, it's gotta happen though. It's
third,
gotta.
third time's the charm. I
Always.
we'll
Broke
see.
clock is right twice a day.
Yeah, it's like thinking about that. Those agentic frameworks. It can be like if the data is not correct underneath and not well cared for and well governed and well structured, then it's the black box, but in Christmas wrapping paper, basically the agentic AI. And again, looping back to where we started, like any good comedian, like people use it to fulfill the stories that they want to be true or fulfill their biases, and they'll invest in. They'll be scared of AI, and I understand people's fear about it for a variety of different reasons, but their narrative going in will be, it's not all it cracked up to be. And then they'll stick a chatbot on the front of data that's not very well cared for. They'll type a question in, it'll give them the wrong answer, and they'll say, therefore, my conclusion is that AI is terrible,
Yeah.
right? And
And my
it doesn't
conclusion is
work.
you don't know how AI works, because I actually get pissed when I hear the term hallucination, because I go, it wasn't hallucinating. It was predicting the next token, which it's supposed to do. You were the one that was
Yes.
putting your trust into it. And that's, I think you're right, Graham. Like, we'll see people like misuse this technology. Could you know, program your own organizational software? Sure. Like, you could do it. But if you don't know how it's supposed to work, then you shouldn't be doing that. I think the nature of work changes, the work doesn't change. It's like, I think we will get to a point where a very good data person can tell some data robots or agents to go do some stuff for them, but always checking it out, right? Like, it's, it doesn't solve for that. And if it does, we're all in trouble.
I mean, I see this even when you train a custom model, like you think, oh, I've covered all the angles, and you've told it 7 or 8 or 9 constraints even, but like there's always 90 constraints that you haven't told it, and it will fall through the gaps. And again, if you're not self-aware enough or not um, adult enough in your work um, in your work progression or your work maturity, then it's very easy to blame the system or blame whatever went wrong underneath it. Maybe we should get together and do a white paper on this, Nick, because I have the same thing. Like, LLMs are not a database of like every fact that exists, and we've verified all these facts, and we know they're all true. It's not like, and this is the fundamental paradigm that people get wrong. It's not like a smarter version of Google. It is a predictive model that predicts the next the next word or series of words or whatever it is, or the flow of words that comes after the ones that you've given it within the context that you've supplied, right? So the two things that always frustrate me about AI, and that's one of them. A good way to illustrate that one, by the way, is to that I've seen is if you ask an AI for some quotes from a famous person, it will give you a series of quotes that very plausibly could have been said by that person, but probably won't, because it's guessing based on what it knows about this person's language structure and what they have said and what they've written and whatever else. Here are some quotes that they might have said, rather than here are some quotes that they did say. So that's an interesting test.
It's like somebody saying an idiom backwards, or your one buddy that just quotes the movie wrong. Oh, you kind of got the gist of it, but it's not quite there. Yeah.
Or I heard this somewhere else. Like the humans do this. If they've got a quote that they think is clever and they don't quite know who to attribute it to, like they always say it was Churchill, right? It's one of the most misquoted people ever, because if in doubt, I'll say Churchill. That sounds authoritative.
Yeah.
I'll use Churchill. But that's the other one that I get. When I see these outrage posts about AI is biased, or AI thinks that all people of XYZ group do XYZ thing. Not to boost any Netflix series in particular, but that is the Black Mirror that we're looking at ourselves. Like, it is reflecting ourselves and our work and our collective creation as humanity, which is the internet. The good, the bad, and the ugly, the far reaches of Reddit and TikTok and the dark web. Like, that's humanity, and it is reflecting that back at us. And it's very easy to like, saying AI hallucinates is a really easy way to devolve yourself of any ownership. Well, that's nothing to do with humanity or me. Like, it's reflecting us back at us, and it's we need to remember that sometimes.
And when we go, below the ocean and the iceberg, people have been saying my data is bad. No, it's not. Your data is not defined well, right? You don't understand it, and the people trying to give it to you don't understand it. That's the answer. The answer
Yeah.
is the AI doesn't suck and my data's bad. It's like, no, you don't understand the data, because just like AI is a reflection of society because it read the internet, data is a reflection of process, people, result. Like, it doesn't come out of thin air.
Yeah.
It's just digitized information from something that happened or something that exists. That's all it is.
Is really important to remember that, and it's a really difficult tightrope to walk, thinking about data from a product perspective, because as well as I do, you put a new BI product out there, whatever it might be, a dashboard out there, like the second that it's demonstrably wrong in something that it says, all trust erodes, and you may as well start again.
Mhm.
And it's folks lose trust in data products so quickly and easily, even if you know they are the problem in the first place. And CRMs is the place I see this the most, of like, oh well, I don't even bother with the CRM data because I don't trust it, it's so bad. And then you could automate the crap out of it, you could connect it, you could dashboard over the front of it, but at the end of the day, if the salespeople aren't following the process and putting the context and the right information into the CRM in the first place, then of course, like, it's and I feel it's hard to feel sympathy for behemoth like Salesforce or HubSpot, for example, but like, they get a bad rap because people are like, oh, it's all over the place and the data's bad, when actually the people using it are just not putting the stuff in right in the first place.
Yeah, I mean, they should only be in trouble for selling the fact that they're going to solve everything with one thing, right? Like that. That's the only problem with those guys. It's like, oh yeah, SAP, we got master data. I was like, no, you don't. You have data structured to work with SAP and whatever you installed in it. Yes, you do. Now, does that fit into the entire product lifecycle within your company? Probably not. So now people are doing workarounds and all sorts of other stuff. And does that need to be? I don't want to. There was an egregious error I kept seeing at a former company, and we can talk about this after. But
Yeah.
why isn't it a drop down? Why is it a free form text field? Why can anybody put whatever they want in that? Why isn't there a process? Like, if you want good insights, you need to have good processes to create good data and understand it, to use it. And we forget about that. Oh, let's just work with what we want. It's like, well, less is more sometimes. Less good data, more insights. Less data sciencey stuff like let's just not machine learn something when we can't even answer the simple question. We're not to that point, right? Um, Everybody wants to skip steps, and I get it. It just that's not how it works. But that's how it feels like the economy works is, hey, I got to hit my 5 to 8% growth target or else. Okay, that's really hard. What happened to breaking even? That's pretty good.
A couple of things go into that, and well, Salesforce in particular, not to pick on them, but like one of the reasons they expand, like it's back to business school fundamentals. Like if you want to grow your business, you need to either get more customers or make your existing customers more valuable, and like bloating the platform is the surest possible way, and telling all their customers that they have to use this and it integrates super well, even if they're not experts in that particular function, is the surest possible route into that. And same as you, I've come across a number of different companies who, it's often one of the first questions I ask when I speak to prospective clients, or I find myself asking, what if someone deletes that Excel spreadsheet? And I just let that question kind of float in the room, and that normally sets the scene for a kind of different mindset towards data transformation.
Oh yeah, Excel. It's a good tool though. I think we keep shitting on it. It's good. It works. It's still my
I
go-to thing to mess around with data real quick. And that's fine. It's no place to store important data in perpetuity. Like I it's just not. So um yeah.
that's the difference. And I see these chains of data provenance where it's like, oh well, employee A pulled this into Excel off of the data warehouse, and then they sent it to employee B, and then they made their own version of it, and then employee C like cut this out and made it for their own department, and like suddenly data's gone through like five uncontrolled transformation hops, and then it gets brought back to the data leader of like, why is this wrong? Like,
Oh
I
yeah,
don't know, it's
I love
strayed so far from
those.
the path.
I love the, hey, I'm gonna get a dump out of SAP or Salesforce. I'm gonna throw it into Tableau. I'm gonna do a bunch of stuff. Then I'm gonna extract that into a, CSV file, and then I'm gonna re-upload that into it's like, okay, like people do what they have to, right? To your point, around hierarchy of needs. I want some stability here. I want a job. I need to get something done. I don't have time to mess around with your bad data. It's just data that's not servicing somebody the way it needs to be. And that comes down to what do you need? Like, what's the user experience? So,
I'll create my own version of the truth because there's sufficient doubt over the enterprise version of truth, so I'll create my own and try and land that. Full circle, back we go again. Anyway, Nick, I think there's like I want to be conscious of your time, and I think there's a million things that we could rabbit holes that we can go down. I'll definitely send you the link to that golf book, and you can let me know when you get down to 7.
yeah,
Although,
we'll see. The
although I
year has not
found
started well, my friend.
me neither. Again, looking at the data, last 3 years, my chart always does the same thing. We go up and then we go down. We go up and then we go down, and it's shortening the up and lengthening the down.
Hmm.
But I've found as the handicap comes down, it gets the harder and harder it gets. I think like you know comparing 18 to 12 to 12 to 9, like those last three have been so much harder than 18 to
Oh yeah.
12 was, right?
Oh yeah.
Like 18 to 12 is basically keep it in bounds and stop three putting so much. A 12 to 9 feels like a whole different kettle of fish. Anyway, we can talk about that at a different time. Maybe we can get a game sometime if we're ever in the same geography. That'd be cool. But thanks so much for coming on and sharing so much today. I'd love to give you a chance to talk about like what you're going to do next and where people can find you.
Oh, sure. So what I'm doing next is I'm going fully back to school, full time, accelerated to become a psychotherapist. Essentially, it's something that I've always been interested in. I've definitely participated in. I think
Yeah.
it's really what I'm finding as I'm doing the studies is a lot of my consulting and data driven like shticks, I would call them. They're going to be pretty useful. So I'm doubling down into that. but I'm also kind of looking for, consulting gigs. So if anybody needs help, I'm around for about 10 hours a week. Happy to help with things around data strategy, analytics. I know enough about AI. I kind of call myself like a functional architect. Like, I'll get you close. You're gonna want to double check it, and that's, I hope it's right, Graham? But it gets
It's not a
it
strategy, Nick.
it gets me close enough. So yeah, I'm just, I'm excited to define the next half of my life and still carry on um, my data driven mindset as I help people one on one. I hope.
Cool. Well, kudos and congratulations for taking control of your own path. I think that's the ultimate sign of career maturity. Wish you nothing but the best for it. And for anybody watching who wants to be connected to Nick, you can find him on LinkedIn, or I'd be more than happy to connect you to him myself if you want to reach out to me. So just let me know. And thanks so much for another great chat.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Thanks for tuning in to Scale Your Business with Data. If today's conversation gave you even one insight, one aha moment, or one new idea to take action on, do me a favor. Subscribe, leave a review, and share this with someone who's ready to level up. Until next time, keep asking the right questions, keep challenging the status quo, and keep scaling with data.